So Glorious teased customers recently with an image very similar to this that hinted at a whole new keyboard design featuring both a knob and a slider. And instead, we got this. And what might be Glorious's weirdest move yet, which is not a low bar these days, they're releasing a standalone numpad priced at $129.99 United States dollars. After rubbing my eyes in disbelief at that price, my first instinct was to head over to their site to see how much whole actual keyboard I could buy for around $130, and honestly, I was shocked twice over. The first time was realizing that you could indeed own a fully built 98% version of the GMMK2 for $109. That has a numpad and is actually a pretty decent board for $109. The second and way more shocking realization was that a pre-built GMMK Pro now goes for an astonishing $349.99 US. The Keychron Q1, which is debatably a better board, will run you $189 plus shipping, and even with shipping being $20 to my door, that's still almost 40% less than the GMMK Pro. Granted, you don't get the cloth wrist rest, and the stock caps look better to me on the GMMK. It's probably a good time to point out that I don't have any kind of financial relationship with Keychron, not even an affiliate link, but I have, for many years, had an affiliate link with Glorious. I do get the demand for a numpad, especially since the GMMK Pro isn't available in a layout that has one. This is both wired via USB-C and Bluetooth 5.0 LE, and it being mobile means you can use it on either side of your board. At a glance, it shares design language with some of Glorious's other products. The angle is not quite the same, and the corners are more rounded versus the GMMK Pro case, so it's not an exact match there. It doesn't have a floating switch design case either, so it's not a match for the GMMK2. The included keycaps are a throwback to a very generic OEM-feeling backlit double-shot ABS, so they likely will not match the caps on your GMMK Pro. These are the same caps from the GMMK2. If you've already purchased an aftermarket set of keycaps from Glorious, you will have extras in the box that you can use for your numpad. But if you purchased the pre-built version, you won't have a matching aesthetic until you do purchase a full keycap set, or until Glorious finds a way to sell you sets specifically for the numpad. It is an all aluminum design, feels pretty hefty. It has the sidebar lights that we see across the Glorious keyboard line, and it has full per key RGB. It appears to have the same knob and encoder from the GMMK Pro, and it now features a slider. Feels pretty smooth. The cap is plastic, though they will sell you additional caps later if you like. Presently, the only thing you can control with the slider is the volume levels of individual audio channels, and you will need the Glorious core software installed to make use of that. It also has a large badge in the lower corner. Not a big fan of this, but at least it's dark in color despite being glossy. They will sell you other badges at launch for $9.99. Included switches here are the Glorious Fox linear switch, 45-gram actuation, clear housing. These switches are only 3-pin here, but the PCB does support 5-pin, but only in north-facing config. They have, of course, said that they will sell you an additional PCB for south-facing later as an upgrade if you want. These switches are actually pretty good. They're factory lubed and they sound and feel good enough that I could recommend them stock. Currently, the only way to get these is to buy a pre-built board from Glorious, or if you opted to join the group buy, which is now closed, and we'll talk about that more in a sec. It says in the marketing materials that they're using the GSV2 stabs. The ones shown on the site use all gold hardware. These do not. These are silver wires with black screws. I see light grease lube on the wires and no lube on the housing, but they still sound and feel decent. No complaints. It is a gasket mount. Comes stock with an aluminum plate, but of course they'll have add-on plates to sell you as well. There's some EVA foam in the case and some additional foam between the plate and the PCB. It's got a 1200 milliamp hour battery in the lower. Battery life is rated at 76 hours, which was of course measured with RGB off because there's a ton of RGB here. At 100% brightness with the Glorious mode lighting, my copy got about 24 hours, and even though the case is all metal, the Bluetooth actually did perform very well. It's not VIA compatible, it is QMK compatible, but only in wired mode. In reality, most users with this thing will probably just be using the Glorious core software for all your control and settings. You can, of course, use all these keys as macros if you want, but I wouldn't look at this as a replacement for any serious streaming tool like a Stream Deck. Like I said, I understand the desire for a numpad. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is the way they implemented this thing. It feels like it's trying to do too much, so it winds up costing too much. The GMMK2 is already available with the numpad layout, where the GMMK Pro is not. $129.99 is a pretty pro tier price point. I have a really hard time believing there's anybody out there that wants to spend more on their numpad than they did on their actual keyboard, so I can't see how this is aimed at the same user that would buy a GMMK2. At price point and build quality, it's aimed at GMMK Pro buyers, so it really should have matched the Pro to a T, both in the case design and the stock keycaps. If you approach it like that, then it doesn't really need another knob, and the application is so limited on the slider that it doesn't really need that either. And if you don't need those, then you don't need an accessory badge to balance out the design, and you could have a smaller footprint. Bluetooth is nice for the laptop user out there that wants to use this thing mobile, but that feels like an edge use case scenario to me. I even understand not wanting to have another cable on your desk, in which case they could have just done a USB-C pass-through, had a short jumper cable to connect this to your board. It still would have been long enough to use it in Southpaw, and you would have saved all the money by not implementing Bluetooth here as well. This could have been an affordable add-on product that filled a need and didn't cost a fortune, but this, at best, feels like a misstep on multiple levels, and at worst, it feels like just something else to sell you so they have a reason to beat you to death in aftermarket accessories for you to customize it. I personally don't understand the demand for a $130 gasket-mounted numpad, but hey, I can't tell you how to spend your money. Despite the fact that it's only a small portion of a full keyboard, and logic would tell you it requires less raw materials to produce, it is likely that it probably still costs a similar amount of money to produce in terms of R&D, tooling, and Bluetooth implementation. It didn't have to, but thanks to an overcomplicated solution to a simple problem, it probably does. I'll even give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're not going to make a huge margin on the numpad itself, but they're going to make a killing on all the badges and knobs and sliders and plates and top cases and bullshit that they're gonna sell you to customize this thing. Thing is, I used to really like Glorious as a company, and full transparency, I have made a little bit of money through that affiliate deal over the years. The Model O wasn't an original idea by any stretch, but at least it was available. I like that they offer some decent, lightweight, wireless mice at a very competitive price versus the big name flagship mice. Even though I don't really care for the GMMK Pro as a product, it does provide an easily available on-ramp for people that want to get into custom keyboards. I don't think that $349.99 is a really accessible price point, but that's a different conversation. My point to all this is that once upon a time, Glorious really felt like a brand that championed the customer. I used to sincerely have a good time covering this stuff on my channel. It's sad, but they don't really feel like that to me anymore, which is why you don't really hear me talk about them much these days. At launch, they marketed the GMMK Pro as an accessible alternative to participating in group buys. Now they themselves use the group buy model for all kinds of things, from mice, now even switches and keycaps. Switches! And they don't even bother to get pre-production samples of these group buy mice into the hands of reviewers so you can get a good look at what you're buying before you put your money up. They ended the group buy for the Model O Pro mouse on June 7th, and 10 days later they announced the Series 1 Pro, another group buy symmetrical mouse. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but they don't really feel like a brand for the people anymore. They just feel kind of gross. Anyway, there's your numpad review. If you're watching this, it means pre-sales open today. Introducing the all-new Define 7 Mini and Define 7 Nano from Fractal Design. All the features and aesthetic from the Define 7 now in a micro ATX and mini ITX form factor. The Mini has room for GPUs up to 331mm with a 240mm radiator in the top. You have room for 2 hard drives or SSDs in the lower and 2 dedicated SSD trays with optional mounting on the PSU shroud. You can also remove the lower drive cage completely to accommodate larger power supplies. Both feature the Define super clean brushed aluminum panel, both have easy to clean dust filters in all the places that matter, and both feature the ability to swap from a solid steel top to a vented design for airflow. Front I/O includes 5 USB ports including USB-C with fast charging support. They feature sound dampening on the front, rear, and top panels for silence optimized builds and all the smart design and cable management convenience that Fractal's known for. If you're in the market for a clean, sophisticated, small form factor build as the centerpiece for your workstation, click the link in the description to learn more. Big thanks to Fractal Design for sponsoring today's video, and thank you so much for your time. If you want to check out a super fun collab video about all the sound words that keyboards make, you can watch that right here, or if you want to see which video the algorithm thinks you should watch next, you can check that out right here. That's it for today, and I will catch you all in the next one. Stay up.